My daughter Sophie believed she had found the perfect husband. He was charming, successful, and always knew exactly what to say. But I noticed something that no one else around me could see. He was not genuinely interested in her. He was interested in what he assumed I was keeping secret. For many years, I owned a warehouse right in the heart of Grandfield. Nobody knew what was stored inside that building except me. Then one afternoon, my phone rang. Gerald Potts, the warehouse manager, was barely holding himself together. "Sir, your son-in-law just showed up here. He has bolt cutters with him." Right at that moment, I knew the trap I had spent months carefully setting was finally ready to snap shut. Before I dive into it, tell me where you're listening from. It helps to know someone out there gets it. For over 30 years, since March 1991, I built my business starting from absolutely nothing. Long working days turned into long years, and eventually those years produced a level of success that gave my family a life full of comfort and security. My daughter Sophie never had to stress about money, and because of that, I always carried a quiet fear that someday someone would walk into her life for all the wrong reasons. When she brought Marcus home and introduced him to everyone in the spring of 2022, the whole family was impressed. He carried himself well, spoke confidently, and had a natural ability to make people warm up to him quickly. My daughter was head over heels, but something about him always felt off to me. It never felt real. As the months went by, my worries only grew stronger. Marcus started asking questions that no ordinary future son-in-law would ever think to ask. He wanted to dig into my assets, my properties, my investments, and even my insurance policies. At family dinners, he had this habit of quietly steering the conversation toward money and finances. Whenever I brought up anything related to business, something in his eyes would shift. A spark of unusual excitement would appear. Everyone else assumed he was just a curious person, but I could see the pattern forming clearly. He was far more interested in figuring out what I owned than in actually becoming a part of the family. One thing in particular seemed to grab his attention and never let go. Back in August 2009, I had bought an old warehouse located on Meridian Street, right in the center of Grandfield. It was a large, quiet building that almost never had visitors coming or going. Every time Marcus found out some small new detail about it, his excitement became impossible to miss. He kept asking me why I was still paying $18,000 a year to maintain a warehouse that looked completely empty and unused. I would just smile and shift the topic somewhere else. The less information he got from me, the more consumed by it he became. Before long, his curiosity had turned into something unhealthy, so I quietly began looking into him on my own. In September 2023, I hired Frank Calloway, a private investigator, and what came back was information Marcus had worked very hard to keep buried. Before he ever met my daughter, he had piled up $380,000 in hidden debt. A string of 3 failed business ventures had left him in a desperate financial situation. On top of that, former business partners had made claims that he had a history of taking advantage of people financially whenever he spotted an opening. The picture that emerged was deeply troubling. I wanted to protect my daughter more than anything, but I also knew I needed solid, undeniable proof before I could say a word. That is when I put together a plan. I quietly let certain pieces of information slip through family conversations, suggesting that the warehouse on Meridian Street held valuable assets connected to my business at Harmon & Co. I never confirmed it out loud, and I never denied it either. Every time Marcus pushed for answers, I kept things deliberately vague, in a way that only fired up his imagination further. It did not take long before he had convinced himself that something incredibly valuable was locked away inside that building. Exactly as I had expected, his behavior started getting reckless. A few weeks later, Gerald Potts contacted me with some alarming news. Marcus had shown up without warning and demanded to be let inside. When he was turned away, he did not leave. He stood outside for hours, watching the property. Security cameras caught him studying the locks, the entry points, and the areas with the least visibility. At that point, it was clear to me that he was gearing up to do something drastic. Rather than putting an end to it right then, I made the decision to let the situation fully play out, so his real intentions could no longer be hidden from anyone. The call I had been waiting for finally came on a rainy Thursday, November 7th, 2023. Gerald was speaking so fast I could hardly catch every word. Marcus had come back, and this time he had bolt cutters with him. He was forcing his way in. Instead of panicking, I calmly picked up my keys and drove straight to the warehouse on Meridian Street. What Marcus had no idea about was that multiple security cameras were capturing his every move in real time. Frank Calloway was already on site. Gerald Pott, the warehouse manager, was there as well, and local law enforcement had been given advance notice that a break-in attempt might be coming. By the time I pulled up, Marcus had already cut through the first lock. The look on his face when he saw me standing there was something I won't forget. Neither of us said anything for a moment. His expression moved fast from cockiness to pure panic as he took in the faces of the witnesses surrounding him. I kept it simple and asked him one question. "Why are you here?" He did not answer directly. Instead, he stumbled through a story about checking in on family property. Nobody standing there believed a single word of it. The evidence against him was too heavy. Then came the moment he had been building toward for so long. I pulled open the warehouse doors. Marcus was expecting to see gold, stacks of cash, antiques, or some kind of hidden financial treasure. What he actually found inside stopped him cold. The warehouse was filled with thousands of documents tracing the entire history of Harmon & Co. There were family photographs, records of charitable work, totaling over $1.2 million donated since 2005, archives celebrating employees over the years, and decades worth of memories. Everything inside carried deep personal meaning, but almost no financial value at all. There was no fortune hidden away, no secret stash, no buried wealth. Every bit of it had only ever lived inside his own head. As the disappointment settled across his face, Frank Calloway stepped forward and laid out all the financial records and evidence that had been gathered quietly over several months. The truth was now sitting right in front of everyone, with nowhere to go. My daughter Sophie stood beside me in silence, taking in details about the man she had trusted that she had never known before. Every strange question Marcus had asked, every attempt to learn what I owned, every story he had told her, suddenly clicked into place. There was no way left to look at it from a different angle. Marcus tried to explain himself, but every excuse he offered fell apart the moment it left his mouth. My daughter Sophie was crushed. She realized that the man she had given her heart to had crossed a line that no decent person would ever go near. The warehouse on Meridian Street had never held any wealth. What it held was something that turned out to be far more powerful: the truth, and that truth tore apart the version of himself that Marcus had spent years building so carefully. In the weeks after that day, by December 2023, my daughter Sophie made the decision to walk away from him. It was one of the hardest things she's ever had to do, but she understood clearly that when trust is broken that deeply, there's no real path back. Watching her carry that pain was difficult for me as a father, but it was still better than watching her spend the next 20 or 30 years with a man who treated love as nothing more than a financial strategy. Today, that warehouse on Meridian Street is still standing in the same spot it always has. Most people walking past it would see nothing special. To me, it means something. It's a reminder that greed has a way of eventually showing its face. People who are always looking for a quick way to get ahead tend to reveal exactly who they are the moment they think a big payoff is almost within their grasp. My son-in-law Marcus thought he was breaking into a building full of riches. What he walked into instead was the one thing he had spent years running from, the truth. And once that truth came out into the open, there was no amount of luck, no story he could spin, and no lie convincing enough to hold his life together. Some people spend their whole lives chasing what they think is hidden treasure. My son-in-law Marcus found something far more costly, the truth, and once it surfaced, everything he had built came down with it.
Please show some love by subscribing my channel. Thank you.